Alright, for today's video, we're going to talk about the percentages of strategies that your students were taught today. Before today, every student was only taught the rate tables using the landmark kind of 10% and 1%. The reason we teach this first is it creates just a general understanding of how we can quickly come up with percentages in our heads and use them to calculate potential sales of items. We can talk about tips and leaving a gratuity after a bill. Overall, 25% of 150, the best way that we've done so far with students is understanding what is going to happen here with our 150 is we're taking a smaller percent of it than the 100%. So our number is actually going to get smaller. Our value is going to get smaller. So 100% of 150 is obviously 150. Going from that, we would use our benchmark or landmark of 10%. And knowing that 10% means this number is going to actually get 10 times smaller, we're just moving our decimal place one place to the left, which ends up being 15. From there, we can find 1%, we can find 20%, we should be able to find 5%. We're going to go, let's say, 20%. Well, knowing that 20% is simply 2 10%, we can say times 2, we take 15 times 2, and we get 30. So 20% of 150 is 30. From there, we'll find 1% just for fun. 1% is, again, we'd move the decimal place not just once, but now twice. And 1% of 150 is 1 5/10, or 1.5. I'm just going to write the 0, so it would be like $1.50. Then we can find our 5%. Now from our options, we could either take this 1% and do that 5 times, so 1.5 or $1.50 5 times, or if I know 10%, I can just take 1/2 of 10% is 5%, and half of 15, so really half means divide by 2, and I would get 7 5/10. From this, to find 25%, I'm just going to add up the percentages I need, which is 20 and 5 and 30 and 7.5. So 25%, my goal here, is going to equal 37.5. So 25% of 150 is 37.5. Now, that was the only strategy the students were taught up until today. Now, what I'm hoping is that this was a quick demonstration of how we can understand that percents are decimals, percents are fractions, fractions are decimals, fractions are percents. They're all interrelated, and they should have been able to convert back and forth based on last unit. So if I turn this percent, 25%, into a decimal number, as a decimal, it's just 0 and 25 hundredths, or 0.25. Well, if I take 0.25, I'm just going to multiply it by my 150. And if I know how to do all this multiplication of decimals, I'm going to be able to get my answer that way. So 150 times 25 hundredths, I'm going to just 5 times 0 is 0, 5 and 5, 25. And we get 750. Put a 0 here. I like to place a 0. I know you can just move over, but really it's multiplying by 20 here. 20 times 0 is 0. 2 times 5, or 20 times 50, is 10. 20 times 1, or 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. We add these together. You get 3,750, but that's not right. We know that we have 2 decimal places, so we have to move our decimal back. And again, you get the same thing, 37.5, converting this percent into a decimal and then just multiplying. This is strategy 2. Strategy 3 is understanding that I can turn a percent into a fraction. Well, 25% is the same thing as 25 out of 100. And simplified, that's the same thing as 1. All right, right. So 1/4. And now multiply 1/4 times 150. Well, 150 is really 150 over 1. If we multiply fractions across, you get 150 divided by 4, which I can simplify. This can become 75 halves, which is also known as 75 divided by 2 is 37.5. And that's going to be your answer there as well. If I wanted to do the long division, I would be able to say 4 goes into 150, and I'm going to get 37.5. But all three of these strategies are things that your students should already know how to do. We've already multiplied fractions, we've multiplied decimals. Now it's just combining it all into one and figuring out which strategy they like best. Now we're going to go through some examples of why and how some are more applicable than others and make life a little easier, such as 25% of 48. I could find the 10% and get 4.8, find 10% again, find 5%, and add those chunks together. Or if I know 25% is just simply 1/4, 1/4 of 48 really just means 1/4 times 48. And if I multiply across, you get 48 fourths. Because 1/4 of 48 really means 1/4 times 48. And you get 48 fourths, or 12. And there's your answer, which I could have simplified, divide by 4 right away, and you get 12. 33 1/3%. Well, as a decimal, this is 0.3333 repeated on forever, and that's not what we want to do. So if I know that 33 1/3% is simply just the fraction 1/3, take 1/3 of 21, and you're going to be able to just get 7. So on these two, multiplying by a fraction makes a little bit more sense. On this one, this is the real life application where we go to a restaurant, we spend $68 on our bill, we want to give the waitress a 15% tip. How much money would we tip the waitress, and what is our total bill? This is one where we should be able to start calculating things in our head. So understanding, I like the rate table for this because if we look at it, we know that 100% is just our bill price. Our bill is $68. I should be able to easily, in my head, compute 10% of a $68 bill is going to be $6.80. Half of that 10% is 5%, which is going to be $3.40. Now together, might have to write something down, but you should be able to start adding some of these in your head to get 15% of a tip. You're just going to simply add $6.80 plus $3.40, and you're going to get $10.20. So if you go to the restaurant, you have a $68 bill, and you want to leave 15%, it's $10.20, which many of us just round. Oh, it's about $10. But this is just a good life skill, so you're able to calculate percentages. And our total bill then is going to be 115% if we include the 15% tip on top of our bill. And then it'd just be $78.20. So what is our total bill? $78.20. What did we tip? We tipped $10.20. So this one, for me, the rate table is a little easier. The next problem, we're going to show like a combination of fractions and the percents. Because it says the jacket you want is 53% off in honor of Super Bowl 53. If the jacket is regularly $104, how much will you save? Well, 50% plus 3%, we should be able to quickly understand that 50% is half off. Well, if it's half, you'd be saving $52, because half of 104 is $52. Then 3%, well, I'm going to go over here and just calculate what's 1%. Well, move the decimal twice, you get $1.04. If I know that I have 3 of these, I'm going to have to multiply $1.04 times 3, and you're going to get $3.12. So if you're adding this across, you're going to end up with $55.12 as a discount. So $55.12. And we're going to skip that one, go here. If we talk about the bill then, again, go to the restaurant. We go to Olive Garden, $44. We want to leave a 15% tip. Calculate the amount of the tip and the amount spent. Well, being able to calculate that 10% is key. And if you know 10% is $4.40, half of that is 5%. You get $2.20. Our grand total, 15%, will be $6.60. That's the tip portion. And then if we know our total spent is going to be 115% because it's our bill, $44, our tip, $6.60, you get $50.60. So again, in and out, whichever strategy you want to use, I believe using the calculated 10% and 1% to calculate everything else as far as the rate tables makes the most sense for the majority of these problems. But then we get to the next one. 82% of the last 450 customers who checked out at Target have spent over $100. How many people did not spend over $100? On this problem, we have to think about all the people, which in my case, I would be all the people that would be spending over $100. All the people is 100%. Now, those who did not spend is what we're trying to find. We know that 82% of the people did spend at least $100 or spent over $100. These are the people who did spend over $100. Here are the people who did not. Well, how do we calculate this as a percent? Well, we just need to take our 100% minus 82%, which we would get 18% of the people did not spend over $100. Knowing that there's a total of 450 people, I can either choose to solve one of these and then do the subtraction here, or I can just simply solve my problem. Well, my problem's asking then 18% of 450. In this case, I'm going to just multiply the decimal. So I know that 18% is 1800ths. Of means multiply, 1800ths times 450. I'm going to set this up in the strategy that most of your students use, 400 plus 50, 10 plus 8, do the multiplication, 4,000, 500, 3,200, and 400. I'm going to add these up. You get 7,200 plus 900. If I add these together, really 8,100. Well, it's actually 1,800, so we have to move our decimal back 2 place values, and we end up with 81 people. So we put our decimal there. 81 people did not spend $100, which is 18% of the 450. 81 people did not spend over $100. I could quickly do, without much math at all, I could figure out 450 minus my 81, and these will be the people who did spend over. So if I do the subtraction, you're going to be left with 369 people who did spend over or spent $100 or over. So hopefully this is helping. Any strategy that your students like, go ahead and use. I'm hoping that they can start using these interchangeably, being able to understand that at some point, sometimes it's easier to find the percentages of using the rate table. Sometimes it's easier to multiply the decimals, turn them into fractions, especially with the 25% looking at it and knowing that that's just 1/4. Hope this video helps, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.